Long ago, in a land far away, there was a man named Ignatius of Loyola. He was a courageous soldier, a lost sinner, and a future saint. After being seriously wounded at the 1521 Battle of Pamplona, Spain, he experienced a spiritual conversion. He went on to become a priest and founded the Society of Jesus, also known as the Jesuits. A man of spiritual discernment, Ignatius taught the following rules for becoming aware and understanding to some extent the different movements which are caused in the soul, the good to receive them and the bad to reject them. The first rule: spiritual movements in persons not pursuing God.
In persons who are going from mortal sin to mortal sin, the enemy is ordinarily accustomed to propose apparent pleasures to them, leading them to imagine sensual delights and pleasures, in order to hold them more, and make them grow in their vices and sins. In these persons, the good spirit uses a contrary method, stinging and biting their consciences through their rational power of moral judgment.
The second rule: spiritual movements in persons who serve the Lord.
In persons who are going on intensely purifying their sins and rising from good to better in the service of God our Lord, the method is contrary to that in the first rule, for then it is proper to the evil spirit to bite, sadden, and place obstacles, disquieting with false reasons, so that the person might not go forward. And it is proper to the good spirit to give courage and strength, consolations, tears, inspirations, and quiet, easing and taking away all obstacles, so that the person may go forward in doing good.
The third rule: spiritual consolation defined.
The third rule is of spiritual consolation. I call it consolation when some interior movement is caused in the soul, through which the soul comes to be inflamed with love of its Creator and Lord, and consequently, when it can love no created thing on the face of the earth itself, but only in the Creator of them all. Likewise, when it sheds tears that move to love of its Lord, whether out of sorrow for one's sins, or for the passion of Christ our Lord, or because of other things directly ordered to his service and praise. Finally, I call consolation every increase of hope, faith, and charity, and all interior joy that calls and attracts to heavenly things and to the salvation of one's soul, quieting it and giving it peace in its Creator and Lord.
The fourth rule: spiritual desolation defined.
The fourth rule is of spiritual desolation. I call desolation all the contrary of the third rule, such as darkness of soul, disturbance in it, movement to low and earthly things, disquiet from various agitations and temptations, moving to lack of confidence, without hope, without love, finding oneself totally slothful, tepid, sad, and as if separated from one's Creator and Lord. For just as consolation is contrary to desolation, in the same way the thoughts that come from consolation are contrary to the thoughts that come from desolation.
The Fifth Rule. In desolation be unwavering.
The fifth rule is in time of desolation never make a change, but be firm and constant in the proposals and determination in which one was the day preceding such desolation, or in the determination in which one was in the preceding consolation. Because as in consolation the good spirit guides and counsels us more, so in desolation the bad spirit, with whose counsels we cannot find the way to a right decision.
The Sixth Rule. In desolation be devoted.
Although in desolation we should not change our first proposals, it is very advantageous to change ourselves intensely against the desolation itself, as by insisting more upon prayer, meditation, upon much examination, and upon extending ourselves in some suitable way of doing penance.
The Seventh Rule. In desolation be confident.
Let one who is in desolation consider how the Lord has left him in trial in his natural powers, so that he may resist the various agitations and temptations of the enemy, since he can resist with divine help, which always remains with him, though he does not clearly feel it. For the Lord has taken away from him his great fervor, abundant love, and intense grace, leaving him, however, sufficient grace for eternal salvation.
The Eighth Rule. In desolation be patient.
Let one who is in desolation work to be in patience, which is contrary to the vexations which come to him. And let him think that he will soon be consoled, diligently using the means against such desolation, as is said in the Sixth Rule.
The Ninth Rule. 3 reasons for desolation: correction, endurance, and wisdom.
There are 3 principal causes for which we find ourselves desolate. The first is because we are tepid, slothful, or negligent in our spiritual exercises, and so, through our faults, spiritual consolation withdraws from us. The second, to try us, and see how much we are, and how much we extend ourselves in his service and praise without so much payment of consolation and increased graces. The third, to give us true recognition and understanding, so that we may interiorly feel that it is not ours to attain or maintain increased devotion, intense love, tears, or any spiritual consolation, but that all is the gift and grace of God our Lord, and so that we may not build a nest in something belonging to another, raising our mind in some pride or vainglory, attributing to ourselves the devotion or the other parts of the spiritual consolation.
The 10th Rule. In consolation be prepared.
Let the one who is in consolation think how he will conduct himself in the desolation which will come after, taking new strength for that time.
The 11th Rule. In consolation be humble, and in desolation be brave.
Let the one who is consoled seek to humble himself and lower himself as much as he can, thinking of how little he is capable in the time of desolation without such grace or consolation. On the contrary, let one who is in desolation think that he can do much with God's sufficient grace to resist all his enemies, taking strength in his Creator and Lord.
The 12th Rule. The enemy acts like an unvirtuous woman.
The enemy acts like a woman, in being weak when faced with strength, and strong when faced with weakness. For it is proper to a woman, when she is fighting with some man, to lose heart and to flee when the man confronts her firmly, and, on the contrary, if the man begins to flee, losing heart, the anger, vengeance, and ferocity of the woman grow greatly and know no bounds. In the same way, it is proper to the enemy to weaken and lose heart, fleeing and ceasing his temptations when the person who is exercising himself in spiritual things confronts the temptations of the enemy firmly, doing what is diametrically opposed to them. And, on the contrary, if the person who is exercising himself begins to be afraid and lose heart in suffering the temptations, there is no beast so fierce on the face of the earth as the enemy of human nature in following out his damnable intention with such growing malice.
The 13th Rule. The enemy acts like a seducing man.
Likewise, the enemy conducts himself as a false lover, wishing to remain secret and not be revealed. For a dissolute man who, speaking with evil intention, makes dishonorable advances to a daughter of a good father or a wife of a good husband, wishes his words and persuasions to be secret, and the contrary displeases him very much, when the daughter reveals to her father, or the wife to her husband, his false words and depraved intention, because he easily perceives that he will not be able to succeed with the undertaking begun. In the same way, when the enemy of human nature brings his wiles and persuasions to the just soul, he wishes and desires that they be received and kept in secret. But when one reveals them to one's good confessor, or to another spiritual person, who knows his deceits and malicious designs, it weighs on him very much, because he perceives that he will not be able to succeed with the malicious undertaking he has begun, since his manifest deceits have been revealed.
The 14th Rule. The enemy acts like a sieging invader.
Likewise, the enemy conducts himself as a leader, intent upon conquering and robbing what he desires. For just as a captain and leader of an army in the field, pitching his camp and exploring the fortifications and defenses of a stronghold, attacks it at the weakest point, in the same way, the enemy of human nature, roving about, looks in turn at all our theological, cardinal, and moral virtues, and where he finds us weakest and most in need for our eternal salvation, there he attacks us and attempts to take us.
Rejoice, little ones, though now for a little while you may have to suffer through various trials, so that the genuineness of your faith, more precious than gold, which perishes though refined by fire, may prove to be for praise, glory and honor at the revelation of Jesus Christ.